I didn't sell my company. How can she do this to me?
Marble that shined like a mirror. The chandelier above him sparkled, but nothing in that room felt bright anymore. His fingers were shaking so hard the paper made a small, ugly sound. It was a letter, not an invitation, not a contract, not a love note. It was a sale confirmation. He stared at the bold line near the top until his eyes became red. Dennis Group of Companies, transfer of ownership completed. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Then his voice broke. Tears poured down like he had been holding it inside his chest for years. He pressed the letter to his forehead like it could undo itself if he begged hard enough. No, 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 this is not possible. He was a 40-year-old man, a billionaire once, a man who used to walk into boardrooms and make people stand up without being told. Now he was on the floor like a child, who had lost his way home. "Dennis, please," Salome said, kneeling beside him. She was dressed like a queen, expensive Ankara, gold jewelry, a sleek black wig that rested on her shoulders. Her perfume still smelled fresh, like she had expected a celebration tonight. But the way Dennis was crying, it scared her. She reached for his arm. "Stand up, baby, please stand up. We will fix it." Dennis's two security guards stood a few steps behind, both men in suits, hands folded in front of them, faces stiff. They looked like statues that had forgotten how to breathe. Because how do you help your boss when his whole life has just been sold like a used car? Dennis slapped the paper against the floor and shouted, his voice cracking like glass. "How can Sharon sell my company?" His chest rose and fell fast. "How, even if I left her, even if I traveled with you, she has no right. That company is my sweat, my pain, my life." Salome's eyes moved quickly, calculating. "Maybe it's fake," she said. Dennis laughed, but it was a broken laugh, the kind that hurts more than crying. "Fake?" he whispered. "This is from the legal registry. This is from my lawyer's office. There is a stamp. There is a signature." He lifted the paper again and stared at the signature line like it was a snake. Then he saw it. Not just the buyer's name. Not just the company name. But the part that made his blood go cold. Consent signature, Mr. Dennis Adeyinka. Dennis stopped breathing for 1 second. He blinked, blinked again. His own signature was there, his own handwriting, his own consent. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. I didn't." He turned to Salome, eyes wild. "I didn't sign anything to sell my company." Salome swallowed. "Dennis." He pushed himself up on one elbow, still on the floor. His voice became sharp, like a knife. "Call Barrister Shadrach, now." One guard quickly brought out his phone and stepped aside to make the call. Salome tried to pull Dennis up again, but he refused to stand. He stayed there, like the marble floor was the only thing holding him together. His mind ran backward at full speed. How did this happen? How did his own wife, the woman he left behind, the woman he embarrassed in front of her children, how did she take everything? And then, without warning, the memory hit him like a slap. A month ago, the day he came home with Salome, the day he lit a match inside his own house. It was early evening in Surulere. The sky had that Lagos orange glow, and the air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. Sharon was in the living room when she heard the gate. Not the normal gate sound. This one was louder, confident, like someone arrived without shame. She looked up from the table where she was sorting hospital admission papers. One of her daughters had been complaining about chest pain for 2 days. Sharon didn't want to scare the girls, but she was worried. Then she heard heels. Not her heels, not Amelia's, not Natasha's. Stranger heels. Sharon stood slowly, her hands still holding papers. The front door opened. Dennis walked in first. He wore a white kaftan and a red cap. His wristwatch glittered like a small sun. He had that proud look he always wore when he wanted to feel powerful. And right behind him, Salome. She walked in like she owned the house. Her wig was smooth and expensive. Her gown hugged her waist. She held a small designer bag like it was a trophy. Sharon's heart dropped. For a second she thought maybe she was dreaming. Or maybe Dennis was bringing a guest from work. But then Salome smiled, not a polite smile, A smile that said, "I have taken your seat." Sharon's voice came out low. "Dennis, who is this?" Dennis didn't answer at first. He just walked deeper into the house, sat on the couch, and stretched his legs like a king. Then he looked up at Sharon and said it like he was reading the weather. "This is Salome." Sharon waited. Dennis continued, "My woman." The room went silent. Even the ceiling fan sounded loud. Sharon's throat tightened. "You're—" "What?" Salome's smile stayed in place. Dennis leaned back, calm, cruel. "My woman," he repeated, "and you will respect her." Sharon's hands started trembling, not because she was weak, because she was trying very hard not to explode. Amelia and Natasha came out of the hallway at the same time. They were grown. One was 20, the other 18. They had their mother's soft eyes and their father's sharp cheekbones. Amelia stared at Salome like she was looking at something poisonous. Natasha's voice shook. "Daddy, what is happening?" Dennis waved a hand like he was tired of explaining. "What is happening is simple. I am tired. I want peace. And Sharon has been disturbing my life." Sharon's mouth opened. Disturbing his life. This woman slept on the floor with him when they were broke. She ate Gary with him in a one-room apartment. She borrowed money to support his first business. She carried pregnancy and stress and fear while he chased contracts. And now she was disturbing him. Sharon stepped forward. "Dennis, don't do this in front of the girls." Dennis's eyes hardened. "I will do what I like in my house." Amelia's voice rose. "It's not only your house. This is our home." Dennis snapped. "Amelia, keep quiet." Natasha moved closer to Sharon like she wanted to shield her. Salome finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp. "Dennis told me everything. He said he has been unhappy for years, and honestly, I can see why." Sharon looked at her, really looked. Then she said slowly, "You are his accountant." Salome didn't flinch. "I was, until he decides what he wants to announce publicly." Sharon's eyes turned to Dennis. "You brought your staff into our marriage?" Dennis stood up, suddenly loud. "Yes. And what will you do? Cry? Shout? Call pastor?" He walked, close to Sharon until his breath touched her face. "Listen carefully. Salome will soon take your place." Sharon's body went cold. Dennis lowered his voice to something even worse. "You and your daughters will move to the guest room tonight." The girls gasped at the same time. Sharon's eyes widened. "Dennis, you can't." "I can," he cut in, "and I will." Natasha grabbed his arm. "Daddy, please, don't treat us like this." Dennis pulled his arm away like Natasha's touch annoyed him. Amelia stepped forward, tears already in her eyes. "Dad, you married Mum when you had nothing," she said. "Nothing. She stood with you. We stood with you. Why are you doing this?" For a second, just 1 second, Dennis's face twitched, like something inside him remembered. But then Salome touched his shoulder lightly, like a reminder, and Dennis's face went back to stone. "I'm not here for a speech," he said. Then he pointed toward the hallway. "Move your things." Sharon didn't move. She just stared at him. Her eyes were wet, but her face was quiet. The kind of quiet that is dangerous. Dennis mistook it for defeat. He smiled, small and proud. "You see," he said to Salome, "she knows when to keep quiet." Sharon finally spoke, her voice low, trembling. "Dennis, one day, you will remember this night." Dennis laughed. "Remember it? I will celebrate it." Then he turned to the guards behind him. "Make sure they pack. Now." The guards looked uncomfortable, but they obeyed. And that was how Sharon, Dennis's wife, walked into the guest room with her 2 daughters. Not because she wanted to, but because the man she helped build had decided to break her in front of everyone. That night, Sharon didn't sleep. She lay on the small guest bed, hearing laughter from the master bedroom. Dennis's laughter, Salome's laughter, and every time Sharon closed her eyes, she saw the same picture. Dennis walking into their home, with another woman like it was a prize. At around 2:13 a.m., Sharon sat up in the darkness. Her eyes were dry now, her breathing was calm, and in her chest something changed. Not into hate, into something colder, a decision. The next morning, Dennis was dressed early. London was calling. some high executive meeting that he used to attend with Sharon when he still respected her presence. Salome followed him around the house like a shadow, already acting like the lady of the home. Sharon stood in the hallway with Amelia and Natasha, watching. Dennis didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed that they were still standing there. Before stepping out, Dennis dropped a brown envelope on the center table, like it was nothing. Sharon's eyes followed it. Dennis said without looking at her, "Inside that envelope is a letter." Sharon didn't answer. Dennis finally looked at her, smile thin. "I have sacked Salome from the company," he said. Salome's head snapped toward him. Dennis raised a hand to silence her. "It's temporary. Don't start." Then he looked back at Sharon. "She has access to sensitive documents," he continued, "but I didn't have time to collect everything from her. You are still my wife on paper. Handle it." Sharon stared at him. So he could embarrass her, force her into the guest room, but still expect her to handle his company problems. Dennis picked up his suitcase. "I'm leaving." He started walking away. Then, as if he remembered something small, he turned back. "And Sharon," his voice became cruel again, "don't think you can do anything stupid. You don't have the courage." Then he smiled at Salome and walked out. The gate closed, the engine sound faded, and Sharon stood there, looking at the brown envelope on the table like it was a bomb. Amelia whispered, "Mum." Sharon didn't respond. She walked slowly to the table, picked up the envelope, opened it, and as she pulled out the papers, inside, her eyes landed on a document at the bottom, a document she had prepared weeks ago in a quiet moment when Dennis first started acting strange, a document she had once held back, hoping she would never need it. But there it was now, still signed, still stamped, still valid. And at the signature line, Dennis Adeyinka's signature. Sharon's lips parted slightly, not in surprise, in realization. A slow breath left her mouth, then she looked up at her daughters. Her eyes weren't crying anymore, they were focused. Sharp. "Pack your bags," Sharon said quietly. Natasha frowned. "For where?" Sharon held the document in her hand like a weapon, and her voice came out steady. "For a new life." Amelia swallowed. "Mum, what are you going to do?" Sharon didn't answer fully. She just stared at that signed paper again, like she was reading a doorway out of pain. Then she said, almost like she was talking to herself, "Your father thinks I don't have courage." She folded the document gently. "And that is exactly why he will not see what is coming." Sharon didn't rush. That was the first mistake Dennis would never understand. People thought revenge came with shouting, breaking things, calling relatives, crying to pastors. Sharon did none of that. She sat on the guest room bed long after the call ended, the brown envelope open on her lap, the document resting there like a sleeping snake. The house was quiet now, too quiet. The laughter from the master bedroom had stopped. Dennis and Salome were already on their way to London, floating somewhere above the ocean, believing the world was still arranged the way Dennis wanted it. Sharon closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks she allowed herself to feel everything. The embarrassment, the anger, the shame of being pushed aside in her own home, the look on Amelia's face when her father said, "Move your things," the way Natasha's hands shook when she begged. And the worst part, Dennis's smile, that small, careless smile of a man who thought consequences were for other people. Sharon opened her eyes. She picked up the document again. She remembered the day she gave it to him. Weeks earlier, the day Dennis signed without reading. It was a Sunday afternoon. Dennis had just returned from work, irritated, pacing around the living room like a storm looking for somewhere to land. Sharon watched him from the dining table. She already knew. When Dennis started humming and checking his phone too often, when he stayed out late but came home strangely energetic, when he suddenly hated silence, Sharon knew she had lived with this man for over 20 years. She could read him like a book. "Dennis," she said calmly that day, "we need to talk." Dennis sighed loudly. "Sharon, not today. I'm tired." "You're always tired now," she replied. That annoyed him. He stopped pacing and turned to her. "What do you want?" Sharon stood up and walked to the drawer where she kept important papers. She pulled out a file. "I've been thinking," she said carefully, "about the company, about the future." Dennis rolled his eyes. Again? I already told you, Salome handles finance now. She understands these things. Sharon didn't react. She opened the file and brought out the document. This is just a safeguard, she said, in case anything happens. You travel a lot. Anything can happen. Dennis waved a hand. Sharon, I don't have time for this grammar. She placed the document in front of him. Just sign, she said softly. It's for peace. Dennis looked at it like it was a mosquito. Sign what? A consent form, Sharon replied, so I can act on your behalf if needed. Dennis laughed. You're always overthinking. He picked up the pen, didn't read a word, didn't flip the page, didn't ask a question. He signed. Just like that. Then he pushed the paper back to her and said something that burned itself into Sharon's memory. Happy now? She smiled that day, not because she was happy, because she was patient. Back to the present, Sharon moves quietly. Sharon folded the document neatly and placed it back inside the brown envelope. Then she called her daughters into the room. Amelia and Natasha sat on the bed, watching her mother like they were waiting for bad news. Sharon took their hands. We're leaving Nigeria, she said. Natasha's mouth opened. What? Amelia frowned. Mum, Dad will never allow… Sharon cut in gently. Your father no longer decides everything. The girls exchanged looks. Amelia spoke slowly. Where are we going? Sharon hesitated, then she said it. America. Silence. Natasha whispered, like, forever? Sharon squeezed her hand, long enough to breathe. Amelia swallowed. Mum, what about the company? Sharon looked at them, really looked. These years, she said quietly, I helped build that company, not with money, with support, with sacrifice, with sleepless nights. She paused. Your father forgot that. Natasha's eyes filled with tears. Are we stealing from him? Sharon shook her head. No. She held up the envelope. We are using what he gave away without caring. That night, Sharon didn't cry. She made calls, real calls, to people Dennis respected, to people Dennis once listened to before his pride got too loud. Within a week, everything moved fast, too fast for Dennis to notice from London. London, Dennis feels untouchable. London welcomed Dennis with cold air and flashing lights. He loved it. Loved how important he felt walking into glass buildings, shaking hands, saying big numbers without blinking. Salome stayed close to him, always touching his arm, always reminding him he was still desired. One evening, after a long meeting, Dennis leaned back in the hotel chair and smiled. Soon, he said, everything will be settled. Sharon will. Calm down. Women always do. Salome hesitated. And the company documents? Dennis shrugged. She won't do anything. She doesn't have the mind for business. Salome nodded slowly, but something about that answer stayed with her. Lagos, the sale begins. Back in Lagos, Sharon sat across a polished table from 3 men in suits. The air-conditioned office smelled like money and power. One of the men cleared his throat. Madam, this is a $1 billion company. Sharon nodded. I know. You understand this will be public, another added. Very public. I know, Sharon repeated. And your husband? The first man asked carefully. He truly consents? Sharon slid the document across the table. They studied it. The signature, the stamp, the date. One of them looked up slowly. This is solid. Sharon didn't smile. Proceed, she said, and just like that, the wheels started turning. Contracts drafted, meetings scheduled, transfers prepared. Dennis was still eating breakfast in London, completely unaware that the ground under his feet was already cracking. The day Dennis returned home. 1 month later, Dennis returned to Nigeria with Salome. He was in a good mood. Business had gone well. He felt powerful again. As his car drove into the compound, something felt wrong. The house looked the same, but the air didn't. Inside, the living room felt empty. No Sharon, no daughters, no noise. Where is everyone? Dennis asked. One of the guards swallowed. Sir, Madam and the girls travelled. Dennis frowned. Travelled where? The guard hesitated. Sir, to the airport. Dennis scoffed. For how long? The guard didn't answer. Dennis walked into the living room. Then he saw it. The envelope, on the center table, waiting. That was when his world fell apart. Back to the marble floor, the truth comes out. Barrister Shadrach arrived 30 minutes later. He was sweating, not from heat, from fear. "Dennis," he began. Dennis held up the paper. "Explain." The lawyer adjusted his glasses and took a breath. "This document," he said slowly, "was legally binding." Dennis's voice rose. "I didn't sell my company." "You consented to the sale," Shadrach replied. Dennis's legs gave way again. He sat on the floor. "I didn't know," Dennis whispered. "I didn't read it." Shadrach's voice was soft now. "The law doesn't protect people who don't read what they sign." Dennis screamed. He screamed until his voice broke. "How could Sharon do this to me?" Salome's eyes darted around. Then Dennis's phone buzzed. A news alert. He looked up at the TV, and there it was. A newscaster speaking clearly. "Breaking news. Former account officer of Dennis Group of Companies, Sharon Adeyinka, alongside her 2 daughters, has officially relocated to the United States following the sale of the company, with documented consent from her husband, who reportedly chose to pursue a relationship with a mistress." Images flashed. Sharon, Amelia, Natasha, at the airport, smiling, and then the document. Zoomed in, Dennis's signature, displayed for the whole nation. Dennis pointed at the screen, shaking. How could she be this wicked?" Salome leaned in quickly. "Dennis, listen to me. I have an idea." He turned to her, eyes empty. "We will go to America," Salome said fast. "We will fight this. We will take her to court." Dennis nodded weakly. Hope flickered. Just a little. Became evidence. The courtroom in Los Angeles did not look like anything Dennis imagined. There was no shouting, no drama music, no raised voices, just quiet power, polished wooden benches, an American flag behind the judge's seat, cold air that made Dennis's skin feel tight. The kind of room where lies struggled to breathe. Dennis sat on one side with Salome and 2 lawyers in dark suits. Salome kept adjusting her posture, crossing and uncrossing her legs, whispering advice Dennis barely heard. His eyes were fixed on the other side. Sharon. She walked in calmly, dressed in a simple navy suit. No heavy makeup, no jewelry screaming wealth, just quiet confidence. Behind her walked Amelia and Natasha. Dennis's chest tightened. They had grown, not in height, in presence. Amelia, now 20, carried herself like someone who had learned how to stand without permission. Natasha, 18, looked softer, but her eyes were steady, focused. They didn't look at Dennis, not once. They sat beside their lawyers like he was a stranger. That hurt more than the money. The judge entered, a white American man in his late 60s with tired eyes and a voice that had heard too many broken families. "All rise." Everyone stood. When they sat again, the judge looked at the case file and sighed. "Mr. Dennis Adeyinka," he began, "you are contesting the sale of a company valued at $1 billion. You claim you did not intend to sell it." Dennis stood up, hands shaking. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. "I was tricked. I signed documents without knowing what they meant." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You are a businessman." "Yes." "A billionaire at the time?" "Yes." "And you signed documents without reading them?" Dennis swallowed. "I trusted my wife." That was the first time Sharon looked at him. Not with anger, with disbelief. Her lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence." He placed documents on the table. Consent forms, emails, stamps, dates, clear, clean, unbreakable. The judge studied them carefully. Then he turned to Dennis. "Is that your signature?" Dennis closed his eyes. "Yes." "And did anyone force you to sign?" "No." "Threaten you?" "No." The judge leaned back. "So you signed, freely." Dennis's voice broke. "But I didn't know." The judge raised a hand. "Ignorance is not innocence in the eyes of the law." Salome leaned forward, whispering urgently. "Tell him about the marriage. Tell him she betrayed you." Dennis nodded and turned back to the judge. "She sold my company because I left her," he said, out of anger. Sharon's lawyer stood immediately. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "Mr. Adeyinka did more than leave. He abandoned his wife and 2 children. forced them into a guest room, publicly humiliated them, then travelled abroad with his mistress. The word mistress echoed softly. The judge's eyes moved to Salome, then back to Dennis. Is this true? Dennis hesitated. Silence filled the room. Finally he nodded. Yes. Sharon didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just sat there, hands folded, breathing slowly. The judge looked at the daughters. Young ladies, he said gently. How old are you? 20, Amelia said. 18, Natasha added. And your father supported you financially after he left? Amelia shook her head. No, sir. Natasha added quietly, we depended on our mother. The judge closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his voice was firm. This court recognizes the consent signed by Mr. Dennis Adeyinka as valid. Dennis's heart dropped. He gripped the table. However, the judge continued, this court also recognizes abandonment, emotional damage, and responsibility. Everyone leaned forward. The ruling is as follows, the judge said slowly. 60% of the proceeds from the sale of Dennis Group of Companies shall go to Sharon Adeyinka and her 2 daughters. Dennis gasped. 40% shall go to Mr. Dennis Adeyinka. The sound in Dennis's ears was loud. Too loud. He didn't hear the rest clearly. He didn't hear Salome's sharp inhale. He didn't hear the gavel hit the desk. All he saw was Sharon standing up, turning, walking away. With Amelia and Natasha beside her, they didn't look back. Not even once. Dennis collapsed into his seat. His shoulders shook. His hands covered his face. He had lost his company, and worse, he had lost his family. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Sharon walked straight past them. Her daughters followed. Inside the car, Amelia finally spoke. Mum, are you okay? Sharon nodded. Yes. And for the first time, she meant it. On the plane back to Nigeria, Dennis sat by the window. The clouds looked endless. Salome broke the silence. At least you still have 40%, she said. Dennis turned slowly and looked at her, really looked. For the first time, he saw her clearly, not as excitement, not as escape, but as the beginning of his fall. This is over, he said. Salome laughed lightly. What? This, Dennis repeated. Us. Salome's smile faded. You used me, she said quietly. Dennis closed his eyes. No, I ruined myself. Salome leaned back, her face cold now. You promised me marriage, she said. I gave up my career for you. Dennis didn't answer. When the plane landed in Lagos, Salome didn't follow him home. She went straight to a lawyer. The Lagos High Court did not feel cold like the one in America. It felt heavy. Hot air pressed against the walls. Old ceiling fans turned slowly, as if even they were tired. The wooden benches creaked under the weight of waiting bodies and broken stories. Dennis sat alone. No Salome beside him now. No Sharon. No daughters. Just him. And regret. He held the court summons in his hand, like it could still disappear if he stared at it long enough. Salome Oluwaseun versus Dennis Adeyinka. Cause of action. Breach of promise to marry, emotional and financial damages. Dennis laughed quietly to himself, a tired laugh. So this is how everything ends, he whispered. How Salome built her case. Salome arrived with confidence, not loud confidence, dangerous confidence. She wore a fitted black gown and walked into the courtroom like someone who had rehearsed this moment many times in her head. Her hair was neatly packed, her face calm. Beside her was her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman who spoke slowly and clearly. Dennis avoided Salome's eyes. He remembered how she used to smile at him in hotel rooms, how she once said, I believe in you more than anyone. Now she didn't smile at all. The judge, an elderly Nigerian man with a deep voice and patient eyes, adjusted his glasses. Let us proceed. Salome's lawyer stood. My lord, she began, my client was in a committed relationship with the defendant for 3 years. Dennis shifted in his seat. She was not just a mistress, the lawyer continued, she was promised marriage. Murmurs filled the courtroom. The lawyer raised a document. This is a signed agreement, she said. Mr. Dennis Adeyinka promised to marry my client. The judge looked up sharply. Is that true? Dennis's heart pounded. Yes, he said quietly. Salome's lawyer went on. Because of this promise, my client resigned from her role as an accountant in Dennis' group of companies. She abandoned her career, her growth, her independence. Salome finally spoke, her voice steady. I believed him, she said. He told me I would be his wife. Dennis felt something twist inside him, not love, not anger, guilt, heavy guilt. Dennis tries to defend himself. Dennis stood when it was his turn. My lord, he said, I never forced her to leave her job. Salome's lawyer responded immediately. But you encouraged it. You reassured her. You benefited from her loyalty. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Adeyinka, did you eventually marry her? Dennis shook his head. No. Did you publicly leave your wife and children for her? Yes. And did you later abandon her after losing your case in America? Dennis closed his eyes. Yes. The courtroom went quiet. The judge sighed deeply. This court does not reward deception, he said. Dennis's chest tightened. Salome stared straight ahead, her jaw firm. She didn't look happy. She looked hurt. The ruling that broke Dennis completely. The judge spoke slowly, clearly, like every word mattered. This court recognizes that Mr. Dennis Adeyinka breached a signed promise to marry the claimant. Dennis felt dizzy. Considering emotional damage, financial loss, and reliance on that promise, the judge paused. 20% of Mr. Dennis Adeyinka's 40% share from the sale of Dennis Group of Companies shall be awarded to the claimant, Salome Oluwaseun. Salome exhaled softly. Dennis didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. The judge continued, let this serve as a reminder that promises are not toys. The gavel hit the table. Case closed. Outside the court, alone again. Dennis stepped out of the courthouse into the Lagos sun. The heat hit him hard, sweat mixed with tears he didn't bother wiping away. 20% gone. Just like that, what remained of his empire had shrunk to almost nothing. Reporters tried to approach him, but he waved them away. He didn't have the strength to explain himself anymore. He got into his car alone. No driver asked questions, no phone rang, no message came from Sharon, from Amelia, from Natasha. That silence hurt the most. In America, a different kind of victory. Across the ocean, Sharon sat in a bright living room in Los Angeles. Sunlight filled the space. Amelia and Natasha sat beside her, laughing softly as they looked through university brochures. We'll apply to medical school, Amelia said. Natasha nodded. Together. Sharon smiled. Not a wide smile, a quiet one. The kind that comes after surviving a storm. She picked up her phone and saw a news headline from Nigeria. Court awards 20% of Dennis Adeyinka's share to former mistress. She closed the app. She didn't celebrate. She didn't feel joy. She just felt free. Dennis's night of realization. That night Dennis sat, alone in his dark house. The chandeliers were off. The living room felt empty without Sharon's presence, without the sound of his daughters arguing over small things. He poured himself a drink. Didn't finish it. He stared at the wall and whispered, I lost everything, because I wanted more. And somewhere deep inside, he knew the worst punishment wasn't the money. It was knowing that the people he hurt had moved on without him. Dennis was alone when he read the article again, not because he didn't understand it the first time, but because his heart refused to accept it. The newspaper lay open on the dining table beside an untouched cup of tea that had gone cold. 2 Nigerian sisters, graduate from medical school, with honors in the United States. Below the headline were photos. Amelia, Natasha, both in black gowns, both smiling. Both standing tall in a country that once felt very far away. Dennis's fingers traced their faces on the paper like he was afraid they might disappear. They did it, he whispered. His voice broke. They really did it. Years ago he used to imagine walking them down a hospital hallway, proud, respected, introduced as their father. He imagined sitting in the front row at graduations, clapping until his hands hurt. Now strangers were clapping for them, and he wasn't there. The man, Dennis, had become Dennis, no longer lived in the big house. He had sold it quietly. Too many memories sat in the corners, too many echoes. He now lived in a smaller place on the outskirts of Lagos, clean, quiet, empty. Some mornings he woke up forgetting everything had happened. Then reality returned. The company was gone. The marriage was gone. The daughters were gone. And Salome? She was a closed chapter that still left scars. Sometimes Dennis sat by the window and watched traffic pass, wondering how life kept moving when his had stopped. He wasn't poor, but he wasn't powerful. He had money, but no meaning. And for the first time in his life, Dennis understood something he had once laughed at. Success without family feels empty. America, the life Sharon. Built in Los Angeles, Sharon stood in a bright hospital corridor holding a small bouquet of flowers. She watched as Amelia and Natasha walked toward her, still in their white coats. They looked tired, happy, whole. "You did it," Sharon said, her voice shaking. Amelia hugged her tightly. "We did it because of you." Natasha nodded. "Because you didn't give up." Sharon closed her eyes for a second. She remembered the guest room, the humiliation. The night laughter came from the master bedroom. She opened her eyes again. That woman felt far away now. They took pictures. Friends clapped. Doctors congratulated them. Someone asked, "Where's your father?" There was a pause. Amelia answered gently, "He's not part of our lives," and Sharon didn't correct her. Dennis tries one last time. That night, Dennis sat on his bed with his phone in his hand. He hadn't saved Sharon's number anymore, but he knew it by heart. He dialed. The call didn't go through. He tried again, straight to voicemail. He typed a message slowly. "I saw the news. I'm proud of them. I'm sorry." He stared at the screen, deleted it, typed again. "Please let me speak to them." Deleted again. His hands shook. Finally, he typed just one sentence. "I know I don't deserve it, but I miss my daughters." He sent it. The message showed delivered, then nothing. Minutes passed, then hours. No reply came. Dennis placed the phone face down and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Silence answered him, and he finally understood. Forgiveness cannot be forced. The weight of regret days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Dennis followed news about Amelia and Natasha like a stranger following celebrities. Rare surgeries, awards, medical breakthroughs. Every article cut him gently but deeply. One evening, he sat in his small living room, watching a medical documentary on TV. A doctor spoke about dedication, family support, sacrifice. Dennis muted the television. Tears rolled down his face without warning. "I was there at the beginning," he whispered, "and I walked away at the middle." That was the truth. He didn't lose his family in court. He lost them the day he chose pride over loyalty. What this story teaches, this story is not just about money. It teaches something deeper. It teaches that love ignored becomes strength redirected. That document signed in anger can change lives forever. That power without character destroys itself. Dennis didn't lose his company because Sharon was wicked. He lost it because he stopped valuing the people who helped him build it. Sharon didn't win because she was cruel. She won because she stayed calm when others expected her to break. And Amelia and Natasha, they are proof that children don't need a perfect father. They need a present one. Character psychology, why Dennis fell. Dennis's biggest mistake wasn't Salome, it was ego. He believed love was permanent, but respect was optional. He believed success made him untouchable. He believed consequences would wait. But life doesn't wait. It records. And one day it plays everything back. Dennis sat alone that night, holding the newspaper again. Outside, Lagos was loud. Inside, his world was quiet. He whispered to no one, "If I had chosen my family, everything would be different." And somewhere across the ocean, Sharon turned off her phone, kissed her daughters goodnight, and slept peacefully, knowing she had protected what mattered most. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.